my fellow readers. In this video I'm going to do something that I thought I wasn't going to do, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And that's, I'm going to give away the ways that I was able to read almost 700 books last year. And in most years in general. I usually do read, at least for the past 5 or more years, read at least 500 books. So I'll give away how I did it, and I think about the first 7 or so things are things that are tips. Like you could try it and see if it improves the amount that you read. But I do want to stress that it is not about the amount at all. It's not about the amount. If you read 1 book a year, that's a success, because you're reading, and reading has been shown to improve our mental functions, our empathy, everything. Read. It's good for you. So you don't have to target like reading a ton. But if you do want to improve, or not improve, if you want to increase the amount that you read a year, you can try some of these things and see if it does help you to read more books. But this is essentially how I did it and continue to do it, as I have already read, I think, about 50 books this year, and it's only the start of February as I film this. So here we go. So my first tip, or way that I do it, is to read from a variety of formats. And what this means is try print books, try ebooks, try audiobooks. I'm actually usually reading a bunch all at once. So usually I am listening to an ebook, and by all at once I mean like the same day, not all like juggling it all in my hands at once. But usually I will listen to an audiobook while having a book on my Kindle that I'm reading, and also a physical book that I'm reading. And I just take shifts throughout the day of whichever fits better for that time period that I have a free moment to read. I do the thing. Also, keeping in line with that, I also like vary what the style of the book is. So this isn't like genre based, but this is like literal, manga, graphic novel, novel book, that whole thing. Novellas, so that there's a difference in length, there's a difference in content. The more that I have that variety, the easier it is to keep reading, because especially if you intersperse like quick, short things to read in there, like how graphic novels and manga are, but also like poetry and novellas, the more you can read, because it inspires you, like you feel like I've accomplished something, and so you can do that. And number 2 is read different genres. This is something a lot of people, I think, get stuck in a reading rut, and once you feel like you're reading the same thing over and over again, you're not going to want to pick up the next book because it's just going to be the same. So I find that varying it helps me to read more. So maybe I've read a really heavy fantasy book, so maybe I'll pick up a very light and quick romance novel next. And it gets me out of that fantasy world, so once I can leave that behind and not move on to like another fantasy where I'm still stuck in the other fantasy, it helps me cause that break. And then, one, it's good for your mind because it refreshes your brain, like, this is something new, and it makes you think about other things. There you go. I just think that variety helps. So again, for me, I will hop between like horror, romance, fantasy, thriller, what else is there? Historical fiction, literary fiction, non-fiction. Again, throw some poetry in there because it's like really quick and easy to get through. Try new things, try different things. Genres help. And I know that's hard because sometimes people think, oh, I don't like those. But usually it's just that you haven't given it a chance yet, or you haven't found the right thing yet. And this is kind of giving away another thing, but it's okay. Like, if you do try to read it and you don't like it, it's okay to stop. Like, you don't have to keep it if you absolutely don't like that. But don't give up on the whole genre if that's the case. Just that book. Try another one. I say that knowing full well that I genre I do not like is Western. I just don't like it. I don't even like cowboy romances or anything. I just don't. But moving on. So number 3, read multiple books at once. So similar to like the format and whatever, but I am, as I said, reading multiple books at once. No, not at the exact same time. I'm not that crazy. But, you know, I usually will listen to an audiobook first thing in the morning, and when I'm getting ready for work, like showering and stuff, it helps me awaken my mind. I also like to listen to it right before bed, so it also relaxes my mind. If you do that, make sure that you set the sleep timer, because you're going to fall asleep, and then you have to find where you left off. And if you did through the whole night, the book's going to be over, and use the sleep timer. And don't set it for too far out. You can always like go back if you haven't fallen asleep and play more, but if you fall asleep and it's gone too far ahead, then it's so frustrating to find the way back. Plus you'll wake up in like a weird middle of the book. But yeah, I like audiobooks in the morning, and then in the morning I usually try to sneak a little bit of time where I do actual reading on my Kindle. So I'll read a little bit from my ebook in the morning, and this is all like pre-work time. Then usually at lunch I sneak in a little bit of time for reading, and that would usually be something on my Kindle. And then after work is when I will set aside a little bit of time for reading a physical book. And this doesn't have to be a lot of time. Like if you're reading a variety of things like that, it's just little episodic chunks. So I might try to aim for a section or a chapter or a number of chapters, like, is around 50 pages 3 chapters, then I'll do that. Or is it 1 chapter? So I would say usually I try for around 50 pages, because that's pretty good. If I'm really into it, I could read for longer if I wanted to. But in general, 50 pages is usually around an hour of reading. I mean, it depends on the print and all that jazz, but I would say it's usually around that. And so you can get a nice section, but it's not also like your whole day. You're just fitting in stuff here and there. But I think having the multiple going, some people don't like this, but I'm telling you that for me, this works. And it's kind of like, instead of binge watching something, it's taking that episode by episode each day. So if you think of it like that, there's no reason you can't read the same way that you watch content. The only exception to that, by the way, is manga. Like usually if I sit down, I'm going to read the whole manga. I'm not going to break on the manga. But manga usually takes me between a half hour to an hour to get through the whole volume. So there you go. Number 4, which I kind of hinted at the last one, is to just read whenever you can. So again, I fit things in the morning, I fit things in at like lunchtime, and then like after work hours. Obviously, if I'm at work, I don't have time to read, I'm working. But at those points that are my time, I can fit in reading. If you have a shorter like lunch break, maybe instead of reading from an e-reader, maybe you listen to your audiobook while you eat. That's a great way to get some bits of a story done. There are points in time where you will have free time to read or listen to the audiobook, and a lot of times you're just not taking advantage of that. So audiobooks are great for, if you take a walk, do an audiobook. If you do a workout. Now, sometimes this isn't as successful as others, but try it. Try to listen to an audio while you're doing a workout. Like I said, I listen to mine getting a shower in the morning, so usually you have to have a good speaker that can actually, you can hear from there, but it works. And then it's finding the other times. I have like set times where I like to do it. Sometimes I don't feel like filling that time with reading, and I don't. That's also valid. But if you can get yourself on a schedule to do things, then you're more likely to look forward to that part, and it's a nice break in your day. Next is one I love to do, but try reading challenges. You can start with just one. That's what I did years ago now. There was one that I think it was like 52 was it 52 books altogether? I don't think it was like, I think it was like a book a week. So I think it was like 52 in the challenge. And I wish I could remember what that was. I have it somewhere. But I felt so accomplished after that I was hooked on reading challenges, and set up the one at my library, and I do that one every year. And then around the same time that I launched that one, I started doing the Book Riot one. So I do the Read Harder reading challenge every year. And it's sort of only grown because now I also do the novelist one, and By the Bookends I've been doing as well since last year. And those two are very fun. The novelist one changed this year, so it's a little easier than it was in previous years. So that's kind of a break for me. But I really like reading challenges. I think that they do help not only broaden your reading, so you are suddenly forced to read outside of your comfort zone, but they're also great, just that sense of accomplishment that you did it, you completed it. And this can also include just setting a goal in Goodreads. So you could set like your yearly goal to read 10 books, and then if you hit that goal, you just feel good. You feel like, I can do this, I can read something. And it inspires you to read more. So I really like reading challenges. I think they're inspiring. I think they break us out of our little comfort zones, and they get us realizing we can do things that we wouldn't normally do. It's just like any other challenge. Once you accomplish that challenge, you realize you can do so much more than you thought you could. Oh, just going on to that, I need to mention this, that I discovered last year that Kindle gives quarterly reading challenges, and you unlock these little like bookmark looking graphics. I can't use them anywhere. I don't really know what the good of them is, but they're really cute. And so I've enjoyed unlocking them ever since last year. Again, I'm kind of a challenge person. I like having those goals and then achieving them. I feel like accomplished. Makes me feel good. So number 6 is something very simple, but it's just to keep in mind that the more that you read and listen, the better you become at it. And I know that sounds silly, but like literally the more that you read, the quicker you can become at it. Your reading comprehension rises and it becomes easier for you. And I found that it's very similar with listening. I've become a better listener of the audiobooks. And so it's like with audiobooks, when it was a book on CD, it was hard for me to pay attention to it. A lot of times readers, and there's nothing wrong with this, and some people really like it, they're very emotive, and they read in a certain cadence in order to enunciate and get the word across. And I understand the value of this. But for me, it's very hard to be an active listener at that pace. So, what I do for most audiobooks is I up the speed. And when it was on CD, I couldn't do this. But now that we have the digital capabilities that we do have and have had now for many years, which is good because for someone like me, it helped me to be able to accomplish more books. But now with the digital thing, we can change the speed of it. And so for me, yes, when I'm listening now, it's usually at twice the speed, which is also closer to my reading pace. So I appreciate that I can actually complete books at about the amount of time that I would if I were physically reading it. Because to be honest, the rate that it's read, it would take me far longer to listen to an audiobook done at regular speed than to read the physical book. So I always bump the speed to 2. If the narrator is really fast, I might be able to do a 1.5. But in general, I'm a 2 times speed person, and no, for me, it doesn't sound like chipmunks. Your brain is kind of amazing, and it will process the words correctly. For me, like you just get used to it. That's all I'm going to say. You get used to it, and for me, it makes me pay. Like I'm an active listener because it's at that speed. it makes me pay attention to what's being said, because it can go by quicker. So I'm like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm invested in paying attention. So there you go. But the more that you do listen, the better you become at being an active listener. And it's the same with reading. The more that you read, the better your comprehension, and you're able to read faster. It's an experience thing. So if you're worried about it, if when you start, you're not a fast reader, that's okay. If you've been reading for many years and you're still not a fast reader, guess what? That's still okay. You don't have to be. There's nobody judging you out there. Read at whatever speed you feel comfortable at. But in general, we usually do become better the more experience that we have. Number 7 is also simple, but one that I go by, read for joy. If it's not fun for you, if it's a chore, don't do it. I think that it is good to try new things and to spice things up, but if it's not making you happy, don't do it. Like, stop reading it. It's okay to DNF things. I need to tell myself that more, because I don't tend to DNF things. Although I will say at the same time, I'm fairly easygoing, and there's not a lot of things that like actually upset me. And also, like, usually when things do, it's like the final book in a series that I'm so disappointed by, and I'm not going to quit on the final book. I'm just going to accept that I didn't like the final book, if that makes sense. But in general, if you do try something and you're not finding joy in it, it's making you not want to read, then don't do it. Like, give up on that book and try something that you really like, because you can give up completely on reading if you're not having a good time and you're not finding the joy in it. And we don't want that. So read things that bring you joy. So again, those first 7 were things that I believe, but also people can try it in general. It's not anything that's specific to me and how I read. I mean, other than potentially the way I listen to audiobooks. So I am able to get through those quicker. But the final ones might not be something that everybody can do. Number 8, I read through a lot of books because it's my job. And that sounds weird, but I do. I do work in a book field, so I often feel like I need to know a lot of the latest books so that I can recommend things to people, so that I'm more knowledgeable about the field, so that I can make right purchasing decisions. So there are a lot of times where I'm reading and reviewing advanced reader copies for other people to make that decision, but also for me to assess and make that decision. Like, is this something that we want to get? So is part of what I do. No, I can't read while I'm at work. There's other, like, actual other tasks I have to do there. But every time I read when I'm not at work, it impacts my work. Does that make sense? So a lot of other people don't have to keep that in mind, but I do. And really, even with it's my job, I semi-include this, even though this is unpaid work that I do, because I do create content based on what I'm reading that also impacts how much I read and the variety of what I read. Is because I'm using that for other things. But there you go. When it is part of what you do for work, it's something that you have to prioritize for work as well. I just try to find the joy in doing that as well. Oh, also, I will just say, like, I literally have to read at least 2 books every month that are just for my book clubs that I run. So, yeah. Sometimes they're not my favorite books, and I struggle to get through them, but I do read 2 a month for book club. So, if you think about, okay, I have to fit in ones that I do definitely enjoy or, like, want to read for other reasons, then yeah, you do what you gotta do. So number 9, again, it's not a chore for me. It's not a chore. I genuinely enjoy literature and the worlds that authors create, whether that's in manga or in narrative fiction. I like the time that I spend there, and a lot of times, like nowadays especially, I'll enjoy those stories more than like watching TV. So at nighttime I might, read instead of watching, some show. Like, I still set aside time to watch shows, but usually I'd find that's like the weekend, and like during the week I'd rather like read at night after I get home to relax. So there you have it. It's not a chore for me. I like it. I genuinely enjoy the break I get from reading, and when it's as varied as I normally do, it's enjoyable in that sense too. Like, I can hop from here and there, so my brain is never bored. I'm always occupied. I have a good time. It's good stories. It's lovely. There you go. And the 10th way that I get through a lot of books a year is maybe ending on a not so positive note, and it's one I've touched upon before. But there are definite obsessive compulsive tendencies and reasons, like my anxiety, of how I end up getting through so many books a year. There is this weird internalized thing in me that, will tell me that I have to get done with this by X date. I don't know, or like, or it's hard to describe, I guess, if you don't have any issues, but like, there's a lot of guilt and anxiety if I'm not able to do what some part of my brain, like yeah, it's good to like set a goal, like, oh, I want to finish this book by the end of the week. But I shouldn't feel extreme stress and pressure if I can't, because something else happens and I need to prioritize that over it. But I do feel that kind of anxiety and pressure. That's what I've been trying to deal with not experiencing since last year? The year before? Well, I kind of felt like it was an issue maybe the year before, where I'm like, I need to watch out the reasons why I'm doing things and make sure that I'm not adding extra pressure to myself. That doesn't belong there. And maybe it's causing more mental issues than I would care for. And again, it is hard, like, if you don't struggle with anxiety or obsessive tendencies, you might not know what that's like, and it's hard to describe. And it's a little bit different for everyone, but I know it's not right. so I try to deal with that, and if I can't finish something, making sure I try to give myself a lot of positive self-talk, that nothing bad is going to happen just because I couldn't finish it, and I will get back to it. I will finish it when I'm able to, but it's okay. And again, last year I had kind of set a thing where I actually wanted to try to read less, because I felt like I was at a point where I didn't need to read more than that. Like, I mean, what am I going for? Like 1,000? I don't want to read that much in a year. So I don't know. I'll try to work on that. I did end up reading more in 2022 than I did in 2021. So I didn't really hit the goal of reading less. But I also feel better about what I read that year. I felt like most of what I got through was stuff that I wanted to. And like, I wasn't just getting through things because I like had to. If that makes sense. So I would just say, if you're someone who, maybe suffers a little bit as well, I feel like there's no reason why you can't just read what you want to. Like, don't try to push yourself to do a certain amount. I mean, unless you know that it is better for you, but don't go overboard or feel like you fail if you can't do a certain amount. Like, you're worth it. It's okay. It's okay. It's just entertainment in the long run. So that's why I tell myself, especially now, and I'll tell you too, it's okay. It's just entertainment. Like, we're never going to get through all of the books and series that we want to get through in life, because it's too short and you never know when it's going to end. So don't worry about it. Just enjoy the time that you have and the experiences that you have, and that's all that really matters. So there you go. If you do want to work on certain things, those are my tips. But that's it for this video. Until next time. Bye.